This Boris Effects webinar replay is brought to you by our technology partners, Dell, NVIDIA, and Intel.
Well, it's so good to see so many people here. It's 7 a.m. here in Sydney. So I just rolled out of bed, but feeling good and excited to present some of the new features in Continuum 2020.5. And the things that I'm going to focus on in this presentation are particle illusion and Title Studio, two of the effects that ship with Continuum 2020.5. In particle illusion, we're going to look at the brand new force types, and we're also going to look at the new favorites option. In Title Studio, I'm just going to mention that Title Studio in 2020.5 is now has native support for 4K monitors. So if you've been using a 4K monitor, you'll be able to see everything nice and clearly now. There's also a composite over source option, which we'll take a look at, and a brand new cast shadow shader. So let's just jump straight into Avid, and we're going to start there. Then we'll whip across to After Effects and maybe come back. Okay, so brand new force features in Particle Illusion 2020.5. I've got just a clip applied here in my timeline. I'm just going to go over to my effect editor, and I'm going to just jump straight into particle illusion by clicking on Launch Particle Illusion. Just launch the particle illusion interface. It's just come up on my other monitor, so I'm just going to bring that across here. There we go. Okay, so I've just got a simple sparkle emitter in the scene, and it has a little bit of velocity. That's what's giving the particles their movement. But you can use forces to control your emitters and your particles. And if I come up to force up above the stage here and click, and then click on the stage, that's added a force. If I double click just down here in the timeline, you can see I've actually added it not at 0 seconds. So if I double click, that'll just bring that back to 0 seconds. So you can already see that the force is starting to affect the particles. Let me just give myself a little more space here. And this is not new. This was introduced in an earlier version of Continuum. You can see as the particles are touched by that force area, they actually get affected. And I can change the angle like that. So forces have been very useful. And if I wanted to create some more organic looks, I could add multiple forces just by clicking and clicking again in the scene, just bringing that back to 0 and just moving that one on the stage, maybe changing the angle. And yeah, that's one way of doing it, but 2020.5 makes that pretty much unnecessary now because we have new options. And the first one under type is grid. So when I choose grid, look what happens on the stage. See, it changes that force to a grid of cells, and each of these has its own direction arrow. So currently all of the direction arrows are pointing to the right, so nothing's really changed. It's just pushing those particles to the right. But when I chose grid type, it also gave me some different options down here under force. I have grid X and Y, so I can increase or decrease the amount of cells in the grid. And I also have strength variation and direction variation, and these are the ones you're going to be playing with a lot. So if I change strength variation, each of the grid cells is going to have a different strength value. So if I just increase that, you can see some are pushing the particles faster and some are pushing them slower. So we start to get that kind of look. If I increase direction variation, look what happens to the arrows. They all change direction. Just come back to the beginning here and press play. So you can see just by putting that grid over my emitter, now I'm getting a much more organic look. Now I've just clicked and added a second one. I'm just going to click, make sure I select the force and just move that around. So see, even when I move that around, I'm changing the look as well. So you can animate that force. You can animate the position, animate the rotation, and you can get some really, really nice organic looks. So that's the new grid type. Let's take a look at the point type. At the moment, the point type is right on top of the emitter. So I'm just going to move it to the side here. Now I can drag the HUD the heads-up display here to change the radius without having to go over here to the control panel. There's also a minimum distance, which is kind of like fall off. And what's happening with this point force is that particles are being attracted to its center point. So as I bring it closer, you can see they're being attracted to it like a kind of vortex or black hole. I guess black hole, not a vortex. Just bring that up. And you can see they're all being sucked in like that. But I can also repulse the particles by giving it a negative strength. So if I take strength down to negative, so I can push them away. And these are really useful for controlling the direction and the flow of the particles. If I duplicated that, just by coming over to the hamburger menu and choosing duplicate, and bring that one across to the other side, you see I can push them back like that. So I get a really kind of force field kind of look going on. So a lot more control now with the new point type and grid type in your particle illusion setup. So let me just click cancel for that now, because I'm going to just shoot across to After Effects, and I want to show you some of the things I've set up in After Effects. Okay, let's just have a quick look at this guy. So this is using multiple forces, and this is something I presented for NAB. There's a live that we did this live last week, and it's a recording on the Boris Effects YouTube channel. And I've walked through this and explained exactly how I built this look. For today, I just want to point out the actual particle illusion part of this. So if I come down to my text, just going to solo that for a sec. I'm going to turn off my proxy. Proxies are just pre-renders. I just pre-rendered this because it just speeds up the preview. Just turn that off. And let's come in and launch particle illusion. Once again, it's come up on my other screen. Let me just bring that full screen. Okay, so over here in the stage, you can see there's multiple grids. Let's just have a look at how these are affecting this. So I'm just going to turn a couple of these off. Actually, I'll turn them all off. Disable, disable, and disable, and disable. So here we've got the text being used as the source for the particles. And currently, the particles aren't doing anything because their velocities are set right down to 0. So here we're going to use the force to control the movement of the particles. So first of all, I'm going to turn on grid 1. Not delete it. Sorry, turn on grid 1. Enable. And you can see if I just roll in with my mouse, you can see how we have a position motion path here. This has been animated just to slide across. And you can see how this pushes those particles up in that direction, which is a great start, but doesn't look very fire-like, does it? So by combining these, there's another one. This is pushing them across to the right. Just going to preview that. So one pushes them up, the other one pushes them to the right. And number 2 has a very subtle direction variation and strength variation. So if that was just a regular force emitter, that would just push them in one direction. But here we can start to add inconsistencies and irregularities to the movement of the particles. Let's turn on number 3. So that one at the top is pushing the particles down. You just see the arrows are pointing downwards. And I'll just turn on the last one, which is the point emitter. And the point emitter is just animating backwards and forwards across the particles. And it's going to give this kind of swirling movement to the particles as it moves backwards and forwards. So I'll just preview that. So you can see the point emitter is pushing backwards and forwards across the particles. So with a combination of different grids, grid forces, we can come up with this really nice natural particle movement. And all I've done in After Effects is added a bunch of different continuum effects to give it the look of fire. I'm going to cancel that and just turn the preset on again, the proxy on again. Just press my space bar. So there's a load of things going on in here. So definitely check out the video that I did on using particle illusion for the NAB 2020 sessions. There's another example here which you wouldn't have seen because that wasn't presented in NAB. Here, what I wanted to do was create a look where the text is made of sort of dust. And this is all using particle continuum effects. There's no stock footage in here. Everything's done using continuum effects, even the background. And what I wanted to get here was a look of the text being blown away like sand or like dust. You can see I was able to come up with that look as well. And that's basically using the same thing, using multiple different grids. One to, let me just pause that. One to push the dust from the bottom, and then a bunch of other different grids to push the dust in different directions. And once again, using other Boris continuum effects to hide the text object as we're moving upwards. And I'm doing a breakdown of this, and we'll be having that online fairly soon. So I'll be walking through all of these different effects that I've used and show you how I set this up. So look out for a deep dive into this particular look. But I think the result came out pretty nicely. It's amazing what you can do with particle illusion and a few other continuum effects combined. Okay, so let's move on. Just going to check my notes to make sure I'm not missing out on any of the good stuff. Okay, so another thing I want to mention is some of the new presets that ship with Particle Illusion 2020.5. You'll find when you launch Particle Illusion and you click on the preset pop-up, there's a lot more presets in here. And I've recently just joined Boris Effects, and it was exciting to be able to add some of my presets in here as well. And some of the rest of the team have added their skills to create some of these presets. So if you're new to Particle Illusion, probably the best place to start is just grab one of these presets and apply it. Let me just find something that's fairly new. I mean, even just this one here. Just a grid of dots. And a good thing to do with these is to apply them and go in and see how they're built. There's another one here. This is the one that's built by Peter, our product manager. Really pretty. And I mean, in any software, it's always a good place to start if you're not sure about the software and how it works, is to apply a preset and then go back and reverse engineer that. We click on Launch Particle Illusion once you've applied this. And just bring that across here. This is a good example of using multiple forces. Here, I've used a point emitter in the very center of the, a point force in the very center of the emitter, and that's pushing the particles outwards. And then I've used just multiple force grids, force emitters, I'm getting my words confused here, just multiple basic force emitters, forces, excuse me, to push those particles out. You can see these aren't grids. They're just placed in this ring just to push those particles out. So you can use forces to really customize the looks that you're after. Just use them in combination and give them really quite, realistic, organic kind of looks. So check out the new presets that ship with Particle Illusion 2020.5. Just going to cancel that. Actually, I might just go in because I want to show you some of the new particle emitter presets. These are really, really fun, these ones. If I come over to my emitters over here and do a search for 2025, actually I can see it down here. I don't need to do a search. This is the new 2020.5 emitters. And these have got some really nice, great retro kinds of looks. Let's just give this a lots of space. If you select an emitter, a preset, and just click in this window here, you'll get a preview. So some really nice sort of vector pixel art kind of looks here. Obviously, being an 80s child, this brings back a lot of memories of playing asteroids at the local bowling alley. And there was a tank game as well. What was that one called? Peter, you'll know what that one was called. That was a green tank game, and when you hit the other tank, it exploded like that. Boom. So some nice new presets in 2020.5. So definitely go through and take a look at those. So new emitter presets and new continuum presets as well. So let me just cancel that. Okay, so actually one more thing I did want to mention in here is just the new favorites option. When you find a preset that you like, let's just say we like this one, this guy here. I'm going to make sure that I've click on him down in here. That's this green one. We've got a new favorites option. So if you click on here, it'll add the current emitter to your favorites list, because there are so many presets here in particle illusion that it can be a bit tricky. You can search to find them, but it's very handy to be able to lay your hands on the ones that you use a lot. So just by selecting the preset and clicking on the star, that will make that a favorite. And then as long as you're in list view or grid view, not in, excuse me, down here, as long as you're in this view here, list view or grid view, you can see the preset in your favorites when you click on favorites. Okay, so clicking on the favorites button will reveal your favorites. So very handy. Okay, let's whip across to Avid again, and we'll take a look at some of the new Title Studio features.
Hey, John. I just wanted to let you know that everyone thinks you were referring to Battle Zone.
Battle
Zone.
Yeah. How could I not remember that? Oh my God, I was so terrible at that. I was so much better at asteroids.
I just thought I'd share that.
Man, I wasted so much money on those games. I was so bad at them. I was better at pinball. Okay, so listen, we're back in Avid. Let's take a look at some of the new Title Studio things. Just going to open up that sequence. And I'm just going to remove this from the clip that I have in here. Okay, it's just got a piece of stock footage here. And prior to 2020.5, if you wanted to apply Title Studio to your Avid sequence, you'd have to use a filler layer. And that's no longer necessary because we have a new composite feature. So let me just find, by clicking over here in the effect palette, 3D objects and Title Studio. Just going to apply that to my clip. And there we go. So we've got the text, the default text composited directly over our shot. So that's going to save you a bunch of different layers. So if I come over to my, let's see, you've got to find my, I'm going to set up my workspace just to make sure that it's the right one. And I've just hidden it, excuse me. It just jumped across to my other monitor. Let me just bring it over here. This monitor that I'm demoing to you on is that I've set it to 1920 by 1080, so it doesn't seem to like living on a resolution that small. All right. So you can see over here in the effect editor, we have this new composite option. So I've been able to apply Title Studio directly to that clip, and I can see it directly on top of the clip, but that's not all. There's also new apply modes. So I can actually apply something like overlay to this one, and you can see I can combine that with the background, which is great. Combine it with the source image. Or something like screen. You've also got new opacity options. I can bring that down, fade that up. Obviously, I can keyframe that, and I've got brightness, and I've also got contrast. So these are all new in Title Studio 2020.5, which will make your life just a little bit easier, and you'll work a little bit faster. Okay, so we also have some new presets in Title Studio 2020.5, and once again, I was glad to be able to create some of these. I'm just going to click on to Show FX Browser. And I do a lot of work in 3D, so I was excited to find out that Title Studio can import 3D objects from Cinema 4D. So I created a bunch of different objects in Cinema 4D, and I've created some looks that we've saved as presets using some of those 3D objects and some text. So you can go in and use these for your own looks. Ones like this. I've created some interesting 3D, just geometric objects that you can use in creative ways. Obviously, these are just presets, so you could go and you could change the background, you can change all the color, you can change the position, you can do whatever you want with them. So these are just a serving suggestion, if you like. Some of them are going to be useful for certain things. Maybe this one wouldn't be quite as useful for a corporate video. So definitely go into the preset browser and check out some of those new presets. One thing I do want to mention is if I come in and launch Title Studio, you can actually import some of those 3D models directly without having to apply a preset. Let me just give myself a bit of space here. I'm just going to go to a single view and choose World. I can hold the Shift key and the space bar down. I can just look around my object just by using Shift and space. If I wanted to add a 3D object to that scene, if I come down to the timeline and click on 3D model file, all you need to do is navigate to your presets folder. I put mine over here in my quick view and come down to custom 3D models, and you'll find them all in here. These are all the ones that are in the presets. So if I chose something like, let's see, strip sphere, double click that, that adds that directly to the scene. So you can use that as a starting point as well. And if you twirl down here in the timeline, you can see it has an outer part, the outer rings, and the inner rings. So I've set these up to be, quite useful. You might just want to use something like that. Maybe you're doing a corporate video that, something about the Earth, or a globe needs a globe. So you could just use that to represent the Earth. And we'll be adding more and more 3D models to Title Studio as we go along. Okay, I'm just going to cancel that. And I just want to show you one more thing before I pass over to Vin, which is the new cast shadow shader. Just open up this sequence. So the cast shadow shader is an effect in Continuum, and you can apply that just as you can apply any other effect, but it's now been included inside of Title Studio, which makes it very useful when you're creating titles in Title Studio. So got a very relevant image here. I just want to ground this on this image. This is just obviously a still image here. You can see if I drag through the timeline, there's no movement. I've got the text floating above it. I want to sort of ground it on the floor, and I can do that using cast shadow, even if this isn't a 3D layer. So if I come over to my effect palette, let's see, effect editor, I've got to make sure I'm selected here. I've already applied Title Studio, so I'm just going to click to launch it. to give you a quick overview of what this does. And I want to make sure I can see my render camera view. There we go. So this is a 2D scene, and I can apply a shadow to 2D objects by coming up to shaders and choosing image processors, cast shadows. This is brand new in Continuum 2020.5. So when I do that, you can see that adds a shadow to the base of the text. I've applied it to the scene, so it's applying the shadow to the layers below. If I had a number of different layers in here, a number of different objects, I'd want to apply the shader directly to that. But for now, I just want to apply it over the top. Doesn't really matter. And the shadow's position is based on the position of the light. So by clicking on scene and coming up to my controls, to give myself some space here, and just clicking on lights, I'm already on lights, you can see I've got light 1. When I turn it off, it goes black and the shadow disappears. So even though this is a 2D layer, it's still affected by the lights. And if I move that light, just by clicking and dragging it in the scene, you can see how the shadow changes. So it's a 2D effect, but it's got 3D attributes. If I wanted to bring that in front of the text or behind the text, I can just shift it backwards or forwards. Let me just, you can see how difficult that is to do that in one view. This is where you want to use multiple views. So if I come up to here and choose dual horizontal, this is where I'd use something like this view here. Grab the light and just put it straight behind like that. You can see how that pushes the shadow forward, very nice. Now you can also use other lights. You can see by putting that behind the object, it's now in darkness. So I need to actually turn on another light. So I'm going to turn on light 2, and there's light 2 there in the foreground. So you can light up your scene and make sure that everything's readable. One thing to keep in mind is with this cast shadow effect, you have a lot of different options. One thing I want to point out is transmission. If I just increase the transmission amount, you can see now it's actually transmitting the color of the object that it was applied to. So that's really nice for things like stained glass window effects and translucent objects, that sort of thing. It might not, something like that would be good for this. It might not always be completely black and white, completely grayscale. Just bringing a little bit of color in there is really quite effective. Let me just go back to one view here, single view. Just bring a little bit of color back into that. And you've got things like shadow plane. At the moment, I've got it on auto fit, but you can change the position of the X and the Y and the Z, and you can rotate the shadow as well. And also a nice little feature is the ripple. So if this was on maybe on a water surface, I can actually just increase the ripple amount and I can displace that, which is really nice. So a terrific little feature for Continuum 2020.5. You're always finding opportunities to need to have shadows at the base of your objects and cast shadows on different things. And this means you don't have to go in and make your scene 3D and add a plane. You can actually just bring in a flat image and make it look completely 3D and make the scene look really cohesive and these objects working together. So I'm going to pass over to Vin now, and he's going to show you some more great features in Continuum 2020.5. So thanks for listening to me.
Okay, Vin, you should be able to share your screen now.
Awesome, thank you. Can we good hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, well, hey guys, it's Vin with Boris Effects, and let me see if I can just get this, let's clear that out of the way. So yeah, hi, it's Vin with Boris Effects, and today we are going to take a look at some updates in Continuum 2020.5 to BCC Remover. It's got some all new on-screen widgets. I'm going to go into some detail about absolute versus relative modes, which is a nice way of controlling it. And we're going to look at some color and detail adjustments, as well as full Mocha integration. That's right, we have the award-winning Mocha planar tracker built right into Remover. Once we're done with that, we'll go around, we'll take a look at some of the new transitions like Crash Zoom Dissolve and BCC Spin Blur Dissolve. So without further ado, let's get started and look at BCC Remover. So BCC Remover is basically a clone spot and shape remover that allows us to clone something in the original footage and remove it. So for example, in this case, we're going to take a look at the mole on this actress's face, and with BCC Remover, we can go in there real easily and replace that. So this is something that's different from Mocha Pro, where you can go in and do inserts and removals of objects in a scene. Basically, what we're going to do here is we're cloning an area. For example, this area up here, and we're just going to replace it down here. So let me give you a quick intro as to how that works. So here is my original footage. And to get started, I'm going to go to my image restoration category, and I'm going to go down to BCC Remover, drop that right onto my clip. And you can see right here, we've got this nice little spot. Bring up my effects palette. And one of the things that is new to Continuum 2020.5 is we've updated these widgets that you see on screen here. So we've got our destination. This is where our clone is going to be, and the source is where the clone is coming from. And I'm in fact never doing that again because that was horrifying. But you can see here, it's taking the texture from right here and replacing it over here. So in order to remove this, what I want to be able to do is I'm just going to, so actually this is a good example of relative versus absolute tracking. So you'll notice here that I can move my source offset, but my destination is always going to remain relative to the distance of my source. And the reason this can be actually very handy, for example, if you're doing a rig removal or a wall where something is always going to stay the same relative distance away from its source. But for this, where we have a human face and we're going to have to make adjustments, what I'll do is I'll come over to my clone section, and I am going to set my spot offset mode to absolute. And what this now does is I now have full control over each of my widgets. So I can adjust my source, I can adjust my destination. And the advantage to having these on-screen widgets is I no longer have to go over and take my eyes off the image and go over to my effect panel and say, okay, is this correct? Do I have it in the correct spot? And then look over here and then look back over here. I can make all of my adjustments right here on the screen without taking my eyes off of it. So if I want to adjust the radius, I can pull back on that, give myself a little bit of fine tuning right there, bring that in. And if I want to feather that out, I can make the adjustments there. So I can do all of this right here on screen without actually taking my eyes off of the actress. But here's what's really cool. If I were to play this back, it looks good from that frame, but because she moves, we suddenly lose the illusion that we have going on here. So we're going to need to be able to track this. And what's great about the new update to 2020.5 is I, in fact, now have built-in Mocha motion tracking. So I'm just going to come down here to my Mocha motion tracker, open that up, and I'm going to launch Mocha motion tracker. And what you see here is you actually have a couple of objects here within Mocha. I have my search area, which are these two circles, and I have my clone source, which are these crosshairs. So just to kind of show you the difference of what's going on here, these are the areas. The search area is where Mocha is tracking the movement of the pixels. Now, because this is the same area that I was originally looking at to replace her mole, it might be confusing, and I did this on my first try, is I set these up, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to track this area, and this is where I'm expecting my clone replacement to be, not realizing that my clone destination is up here. So if I set up the search areas, close that out, you're going to see that all of a sudden everything jumps up here. And the reason for that is that the search area and destination match these crosshairs, the clone destination and the clone source. So make sure that whenever you're doing a track, come down here and you make sure that your destination and your search area are exactly where you want them to be. Now, because Mocha is a planar tracker, on a different image, I could set up my tracking to be over here. I just know from experience, having worked on this project for NAB, that this is sort of the best area to do that. So basically, once I have my search area set up and I have my clone destination right there on top of her mole, and the clone source sort of right here a little bit up, I'm going to take from this area and place it here. I can go to Mocha and I can hit the track button. Now, because this is a webinar and we have a limited time tonight, I have actually gone and pre-baked this. So what I'm going to show you is something that's very handy. I'm in fact going to go in and I'm going to delete all my trackers. I'm going to go right up to File, select Merge Project, where I have saved off my mole track. And this is really good if you are in fact working with, maybe you have someone who's working in After Effects and it needs to import to send you the tracking information directly to your working in Avid. The BCC Remover is available in all hosts. So that's AE, Premiere, Avid, an OFX host. So if you have someone that's actually working in a different host, they can simply save off their motion track, send it to you, and you can load it directly into Avid. And as you can see, that's tracking very nicely with the movement of her face. So if I sit there, if I decide that I'm going to save that and save out, and there you go. If I actually scrub through this, you can see that the track there moves with her face, so it's not quite as obvious. Now, there are a couple things that we can do, because as you do see here, we do have a little bit of a coloration, that's distortion there. So let me show you how we fix that. First thing I can do is I can certainly adjust my feathering, but we do have controls up here in the clone subgroup, or I can adjust the color and the detail. Now the color is going to pull the luma from the source image, whereas the detail will pull the chroma from the destination image. And what I can do, and we'll see this sort of on a bigger scale in just a moment, but what I can basically do is come in here and start nudging my color down a little bit. And you can see that as I do that, I'm getting a little bit of the coloration is now starting to blend a bit more. I'm adjusting, I'm pulling in a bit more of the detail, so you can start to see the pores that are in her skin. And this is going to help us prevent creating this weird mask, like she's put on too much makeup. So let me show you this on a larger scale. What I have here is, let me just move over. If Avid, there we go. So what we have here is we have an actress, and the idea that I want to do here is I'm not just going to remove a mole. I actually want to digitally remove some of the wrinkles that are around her face. I want to give her sort of take some age out of her eyes, and I can do that very easily with the with the BCC Remove tool. So let me show you how that's done. And you can see that we're going to be doing this on a larger scale, so you'll get a really good sense of how these the color and detail controls work. So here's my original footage. Again, I'm going to go in and I am going to drop BCC Remover directly onto my clip. And when I do, it immediately pops up with my spot removal. So you can see up here, removal method, clone spot. This is the same as we had before, where I have my widgets here and I can start doing the positioning. Now, you'll notice one of the issues that I kind of come into is even if I start making these adjustments, it's an irregular shape. So these circles that I have here, the radius that I have here, isn't really going to work to give me the look that I want. So rather than doing clone spot, what we're going to do is actually change our removal method to clone shape. And when I do that, we get this new widget down here, but it also a message that says we need to enable Pixel Chooser and select a shape matte. So if I close out clone and come down here, the first thing is we have Pixel Chooser Mocha, and this is going to be different from the Mocha we just took a brief look at, where we're in fact motion tracking the specific source and destination points. When I launch Mocha, the first thing you'll notice is that I don't have those tracking points. And that's because what we're actually going to do here is tell Mocha, I'm not tracking a point, I'm going to create a mask. So I can come up here to my X-spline, and I can create any kind of mask that I want. Let's do this. We'll create a nice little round mask over here. And I can tell Mocha, let's track this. So if I hit track, we'll let Mocha kind of do its thing. And by the way, just for an example, we had this question during NAB, how quickly does Mocha track? You can see that this is actually going along pretty well. We're on HD footage here, but that's actually tracking very, very nicely. So I can go in here and I can actually track this space. Now, again, like I had done previously, because this is a shorter webinar, I want to go in here just to kind of reiterate this point. I'm going to delete that, and I've gone in, and just to show you that it's so easy to really pull in previous masks that we've done. Here's one that I created earlier, and as you can see, you know, Mocha tracked that really nicely, really quickly. And so let's take a look at this and see how we adjust this and use this mask to really kind of remove the wrinkles on her face. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to save out of there. You'll notice that it went away, and now we have sort of this kind of odd looking shape. What this does is it corresponds to where our relative offset is. So if I want to make adjustments, I'm simply going to move this, and you'll notice that it very quickly updates. This is sort of the original position. So let's get rid of, let's go down here. Actually, no, let's go in the other direction. We'll come down here, we'll nudge it just a little bit. I'm going to come on over here a bit. I'm going to leave a little bit of the wrinkles in, and I'm going to show you why in just a moment. But this is sort of a good start. Now, as we did before, this is a very harsh line. This doesn't look real. So I'm going to go over here, and as you saw me do originally with the on-screen widget, I can adjust the feathering. But you'll notice that the widget is different. So we have different controls. If I go into my clone controls, you'll notice I don't have any options for feathering. And the reason for that is because we are currently working with a Mocha mask. This mask here exists within Mocha. So all I need to do is come down here to my pixel chooser mask, open that up, and my feather options are here. So I'll go and I'll start to blend those out. And already you can see that we're doing a really, really nice job of just feathering that and giving it a nice look. We do have a little bit of detail here, and it's important that we still keep some of the detail because we don't want this to look like something's just been plastered over her face. But we also have this issue here where we're getting, here's a dark spot, it sort of mirrors over here, we've got a light spot here, and she's starting to get this look, raccoon-like look where the coloring isn't matching. Let me show you how to fix that. I'll come in and we're going to go up to this clone color. Now remember, as we did before, I'll show you this now on a larger scale. Clone color is going to pull the luma from the source, and clone detail will start to pull the chroma from the destination. And what that means is, as I bring my clone color down, we're going to get some blending that goes in there. We're going to pull some of that shadow from the source layer. So we're going to blend that out just a little bit. And if I pull back on the detail or maybe increase the detail, you can see that I can start to bring in some of the original detail and texture that's there. Now I want to keep a little bit of these wrinkles. So I'm going to sort of adjust the size and texture here so that I can bring in the natural pores that are in her skin and really start to finesse this. So let's pull back just a tad there. And as you start to work with it, you can start to play around and just really start to slowly finesse this until you get a result that really works for you. You can make little adjustments in the offset here. Let's move this back actually. So we can really start to get results that match what we originally had, something that gives it a nice look of blending without actually making it look as if her face is plastic. Now, I did this for you very, very quickly, but earlier I took some time, and if I want to, I can go in here, and just as I did with my Mocha mask, I can actually go in here, and I've saved off a preset. This is her left eye, where I've done the work, where I spent a little bit more time kind of slowly finessing it. You can see that we have a smoother option here. Loading a preset, saving a preset, like exactly with what we saw in Mocha, where I loaded the Mocha mask track, is really helpful if you have, you know, an effects person who is working in After Effects or is working in Vegas or is working in Resolve. They create the effect for you, and you want to load that directly into Avid. You're editing in Avid, you want to edit it directly in the timeline. All they have to do is save off that preset, and you can load that directly into Avid, right into Remover, and get the exact same results immediately. Now, we've done one here, but she also has some wrinkles over here, and I want to make this sort of match. So what I can do is I can hold down the Alt key because we're working in Avid, and I'm going to drag, let's see, my effect palette is in the way, but I'm going to hold down Alt. I'm going to drag Remover right onto the effect. And now I get a second instance of BCC Remover. This here is my original that I've been working with. So you can see that if I toggle that on and off, but this is the new one, and you'll see that it defaults immediately to my on-screen widgets here for my spot removal. Just as I did before, I'm going to change my clone spot to a clone shape, which is going to prompt me to do create a mask. I'll come down here to my pixel chooser, Mocha, open that up, launch Mocha. And just as I did before, I can come in here and I can create a mask, something like that, and set it to track, and Mocha will track the movement of her face there, as you can see that it's doing now. But if we want to, again, merge from a pre-existing effect that my effect editor has created, I can go right in here. Here is her right eye, load that track, and as you can see, Mocha will then load the track that I've created earlier. So that's going to allow me again to come out. I can save it. And once again, I will do the same thing. So this is a separate instance, so it's only going to be focused on this eye here. So we can move that around to get, you know, sort of really start to finesse where we want to move that. We got a little too much shadow there, so I'll just pull back over here a bit. Well, let's bring that up just a little bit. Try and get some of the shadowing out of the way. That looks like it could work a bit. Let's see if we can just nudge that a tad. So we can do something like that. And then remember, we'll come right down here to our mask. We're going to feather that out. You know, and already we're getting some good results, but we do have some differences here in terms of the color and texture. So we'll just come in here to our clone color, and it's really just, it's so easy to kind of come in here and pull back on that color and really start to finesse the overall look so that you maintain a similar color gradient, as well as sort of the details of all the little pores. And remember, even though we have some of the wrinkles that are still there, we can still see it. You want to end up keeping some of those, because as you do, I mean, nobody's face is completely perfect. We all have little fine lines, but it is a much more convincing effect if you keep a little bit of it in and then just start to finesse out and smooth out some of the coloring and some of the details that are there. And as we sort of saw before, if I wanted to, let's say I've created a new effect, or my editor has created an effect for me, I can certainly go in, load the preset that they sent me, and with a little bit more finessing, we can get results that look virtually flawless. And so you can kind of see, if I just kind of turn these on and off, you can see just how quickly and easy it is to use BCC Remover to, you know, sort of mask out or to clone out areas and create either digital makeup, or, as the case may be over here, you know, sort of remove the mole here. Use the spot remover to take care of that mole and get a really good natural result. And because you can stack multiple versions of the filter and there'd be multiple versions of Mocha all working to do motion tracking and masking, I could drop, you know, I have the effect that's on here right now. I could drop another one. Let's see, we can drop another version of remover here. And then rather than using that clone shape that we saw earlier, I can come up here and we can start to get rid of some of these little lines that you see in her forehead. So you can really have a lot of control over the overall look and detail and coloring that you have within your removes. So let's come in here, and again, just as we did before, we'll take care of the coloring, sort of bring that down. I'm not tracking on this one, but just to give you an idea that, you know, we can really create something that starts to look really, really good, really natural, and keep a lot of the textures that are in the face and let that transfer over to the replacement. So that is basically BCC Remover. So you know, as we mentioned before, there's some of the new updates that are available in that. You've got these widgets that make it so much easier to work with, where you can simply adjust the position either relatively in relation to your source or independently with an absolute mode. You can adjust the radius, the destination angle, the feathering, all of this you can do directly on the screen without having to take your eyes off the image that you're working on and, you know, having to look over here and then look back. So you have full control over that. You have, you know, we've updated it with the Mocha in there so that you have absolute control over the tracking and masking to get really, really, really wonderful results. And, you know, like I said, I'm working in Avid, but if you have someone that's working in Premiere and they do the effect there, you can save off the filters, you can save off the presets, send those directly from AE to Avid and load that directly into Avid and get their same results that you would have in After Effects or the same results that you would have in Vegas or any other supported host. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some of the new transitions that are currently available with Continuum 2020.5. So let's close this project and we're going to open up the transitions. Now there are two transitions that are available in Continuum 2020.5. Let's just make a single monitor here. And the first of which that we're going to look at is probably one of my favorites. Now I don't play favorites, but to be perfectly honest, this is definitely one of my favorites. And it's BCC Crash Zoom. And BCC Crash Zoom is will offer these distortions where it basically creates a prism-like effect and zooms in and out. So it's a rapid zoom distortion between two clips. And let's take a look at that in a little bit more detail. So what I have here is I have an example. Let's start from the beginning here. We got a little bit of time. So I'm going to remove the effect here, and I've got these two clips. So I have my two dancers, one here, and I want to apply the transition between them. So I'll come up here, close this out. I'm going to come up here to my transitions and drop on, where is it? We're going to do Crash Zoom Dissolve. So drop that on right between the clip. Now, when I launch my effect editor, one of the great things that is available in all of our transitions, not just the new ones, is we have these on-screen widgets that allow me to adjust the on-screen dissolve, how long it takes to dissolve between the two effects. You also have control over your ease curves here, so you can make adjustments to how quickly it transitions in and out, how fast it eases in and out of that transition. So you have a lot of control over the transition itself just by using these on-screen widgets. Now, if I want to control the look of the dissolve, I do have some controls over here. Just pull up my effect editor. So I have a lot of control here over whether or not I want the animation to auto animate, which means that it will just go from beginning to end, 0 to 100%, and back to 0. or I can go through and do what is known as %done, and %done is going to allow me to keyframe that, so I have far more control over the look of it, and I control when it starts and when it ends. But one of the cool things to get a better sense of what is available to work with Crash Zoom Dissolve is, of course, the FX browser. So if I launch that, I am going to, in fact, 1 second here, I will reset. Ooh, that's interesting. Install. There we go. Okay, so with the FX browser, there are built-in presets, factory installed presets, and this is going to give you a good example of the different types of transitions that are available. So you can preview them. You can preview the look here. If you look back and say, hey, you know, what was I previously looking at? There's a nice little history here, so you can go back. Now these transitions are going relatively quickly just because it's a short clip that we're animating between, but this is going to give you a sense of what is available and what you can work with. So for example, if I were to, oh, actually, let's take this one here. That's kind of an interesting frame. You can go through and actually have this area where the Crash Zoom pushes forward through this central circular area. So I'm going to hit apply. And one of the cool things about presets, something that, you know, presets are there and they're a good start, but they're always stepping stones to creating your own effects. If I were to come down here, let's say I don't particularly like this circular wipe. If I was going to come down here to our region animation, I can change the region animation type from circle to a line and then adjust that. Pull back to an earlier frame so we can kind of see that a bit more. So I can adjust it so that rather than having it be a circle, it can be a line. I can come in here and I have full control over, does it come in as a wipe? How does it animate? Does it animate out? Does it animate in? I have complete control over that. Inside of Crash Zoom, if I want to have, for example, a stronger prism effect, I can increase the prism amount to get these really nice chromatic aberrations on the side. I can even adjust the sample count. Let's say that I like the aberrations, but I want something more defined. I have full control over that. So with the on-screen widgets that we see earlier, I'm going to pull those back up. With these on-screen widgets, I have full control right on the screen of all of my transition effect. And then here I can adjust all of the parameters to really customize the look of the effect. So I can actually, let's increase that and create sort of a more blurred effect. So that's BCC Crash Zoom Dissolve, one of my favorites, really fun to work with and can create some really great effects. Another one that I enjoy working with, and that's new with Continuum 2020.5, is Spin Blur Dissolve. And much like Prism, it creates this nice spiral effect, but here we're creating a spiral and a blur to really kind of do this nice sweeping transition between the two effects. We'll open this example. And as you can see, just as before, we have the on-screen ease curves here, so I can adjust the duration of my effect, ease in and out, and make some adjustments in the overall look of that. And then if I come up here, launch my effects editor, and I open up the FX browser, I will reset to my factory installed presets. And there you can see that I have a number of different options in how to create this look. Again, we still have the same type of region settings where I can set this up to circular or a linear motion. I can also change the direction of the spin blur itself. So let's say that I'm not a fan of it spinning in this direction. I can certainly come in here and have full customizable control over the direction of which way it's zooming, how much of a blur I have, whether or not there is in fact a prism effect on that. And I have full control over all the effects that are there. And it can really create some impressive results. You're probably not going to use these for your, regular family wedding video, but if you're doing, for example, a music video or something really cool, and you want this sort of very, very intense and very, very cool transition, Continuum 2020.5 absolutely has these wonderful transitions available. So that is BCC Remover and some of the new transitions that are available in 2020.5. I'm going to toss this back over to Jesse, and if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.